I spent $12,000 to bring my family to my medical school graduation, and they skipped it for a cruise and wrote in a message, "Watching you pretend to be a doctor hurts." My aunt added, "We'd rather be somewhere where there's something to celebrate." So I sent them a copy of my diploma and photos of their empty VIP seats. 3 hours later, my mom was sobbing on my voicemail, but I had already done what they didn't expect. The next few days were filled with quiet satisfaction for Adam. He knew he was playing a dangerous game, but for the first time in a long time, the tension in his chest eased. The emptiness left by his family's absence at graduation became a distant echo, replaced by the power he now had over them. He watched his phone closely, waiting for the inevitable responses. Calls and messages came one after another, each more desperate than the last. His mother's voice broke with a mixture of confusion and guilt when she was finally able to leave him a voicemail. "Adam, please, we didn't know it was so important to you. We just thought it didn't matter. I never meant to hurt you, please call me, okay? Please." He didn't call her. Instead, he left her to suffer. He left everyone to suffer. His grandmother's legacy was now completely under his control, a symbol of the independence his family had never allowed him to feel. Every penny he took reminded him of what he had given them his entire life, now transformed into an opportunity for revenge. His family's silence was suffocating. His mother, his aunt, even his little sister were strangely quiet. It was as if they were waiting for him to make the first move, and perhaps that was what worried them most, that he wasn't going to. It was only when his Aunt Katie contacted him that Adam felt the first stirrings of curiosity. She was the only one who had ever seemed caring, at least enough to pretend. But even her approach had a barely concealed urgency. She wrote to him, "I know we've had our differences, but this has gone too far. We need to talk about the package you sent to your mother. Please don't let this destroy what's left of your family." He stared at her message for a long time, his fingers hovering over the keys. She was right about one thing: it was more than just a letter, a photograph, money. It was something he had finally realized. They had never seen him. Not really. They hadn't seen who he was or what he had done to end up here. His family's love was conditional, and the moment he stepped out of line, they rejected him. He pressed reply. "What's left? What's left of my family, Katie? If they can't support me when it matters most, then I don't care. If they want to pretend everything is fine, then they better prepare for the consequences." The message remained on the screen for a moment before he pressed send. Almost immediately, his phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Katie. It was his sister. "Are you really going to do this? You're hurting Mom. You're only making things worse. Please let it go." Adam didn't respond. Instead, he stood up, walked over to the window of his small apartment, and looked out at the gray sky. He had never seen his family the way he saw them now. They had always decided what was best for him, what to worry about, what to value, what to strive for. The anger had been building up for years, but now it had turned into a quiet strength. He was no longer in their power. He turned away from the window and walked over to his laptop. He opened his bank account again. He had taken several strategic steps with his inheritance to make sure they couldn't get their hands on it, but there was one last thing to do. He called his lawyer. "Adam," the lawyer said when he answered, "everything is ready. Your family won't get a penny of your grandmother's inheritance unless you let them. You know what to do when the time comes." Adam didn't want to hear any more. He hung up, sat down in his chair, and let everything sink in. The money was only the first part. The real power lay in what he would do next. The next day, Adam received a letter from his mother. It wasn't a voice message or a text. It was handwritten, her last attempt to reach him. She wrote that she missed him. She wrote that she forgave him. She wrote that she wanted to make things right. Adam read the letter twice, but all he could think about was how empty her words were. His phone rang again, but this time he didn't need to look at the number. He already knew who it was. His mother. He stared at the phone for a long time, his hand over the screen. He almost picked it up. Almost. Then he smiled, turned off his phone, and left the apartment. He would no longer be anyone's second choice. Not for his family. Not for anyone. He was done with them. The next few days passed in silence, in quiet, deliberate actions. Adam's world shrunk to his small apartment, the streets of the city, and the endless cycle of messages and calls from his family. But none of that mattered. Not anymore. He didn't need their recognition, their approval, or their empty apologies. He needed to close this chapter, and that's exactly what he was going to do. It all started with a quiet letter to his lawyer. "We're ready. Send the papers." The message was short, but it was a turning point. He wasn't going to wait for his family to come to him. He wasn't going to give them a chance to justify themselves. He was taking matters into his own hands and wasn't going to leave them any choice but to face the consequences of their actions. By the time the documents were ready to be sent, Adam had already begun the next phase of his plan. He called his bank to make sure all financial changes had been made, his accounts were secure, and the money he had inherited from his grandmother was safely locked away. When everything was ready, Adam printed out the divorce papers from his laptop. But this was not a divorce from his partner, it was a divorce from his entire family. He carefully folded the papers and placed them in an envelope. The final step was all that remained. The next day, Adam drove to his mother's house, his hands firmly on the wheel as he drove along familiar roads. The house was just as he remembered it, large, imposing, with a quiet charm that made it more like a museum than a home. His stomach tightened. He hadn't been here in years, and it felt like he had entered a different life, one where he was just a shadow of the son he had once tried to be. When he reached the front door, he hesitated for a moment, looking at the door knocker. He could already hear the quiet voices of his family inside. His mother's voice was soft and pleading, as if she hadn't just destroyed his world. He raised his hand to ring the doorbell, but before he could press it, the door opened. It was his mother. "Adam," she said in a trembling voice. "You came." She looked older, somehow smaller, the years of neglect finally showing in her movements, in the way she held herself. "I brought something," Adam said in an even, almost cold voice. "I thought you might need it." He handed her the envelope. "What is it?" She looked at him, her hands trembling slightly. "It's everything you wanted," Adam replied. "All the apologies, all the I'm sorry's, everything you think will fix this. But I'm done. I don't need to hear it anymore." Her eyes widened, confusion appearing in them. "What are you talking about?" "I've had enough," Adam said, his words becoming harsher. "Enough of being ignored. Enough of pretending that your way is the only way. Enough of being your punching bag. I'm not going to be the good son anymore. I'm not going to be the person you turn to when it suits you." He saw her trying to process his words, to comprehend the reality of what he had said. "Adam, please. We never wanted." "No," he interrupted, his voice finally breaking through. "You never wanted this. None of you did. You wanted to see me fail. You wanted to see me beg for your approval. Well, I'm not going to do that anymore." Adam stepped back, his heart pounding, but a strange feeling of freedom filled his chest. The weight that had been suffocating him for so long was finally gone. His mother looked at the envelope in her hands, her lips trembling. "Adam, please don't do this. We're family. You don't have to do this." But Adam couldn't hear her anymore. He was already walking away, turning his back on the house, on the family that had abandoned him when he was in trouble. He didn't look back. The next morning, the papers were filed. Adam's lawyer made sure everything was in order, and in a few hours, his family would be served with notice. They would find out, just as he had, that the ties had been severed. They would understand that he wasn't coming back, and the calls would keep coming. But it wouldn't matter, because Adam had already built a future without them. The following week, as the letters piled up, Adam sat quietly in his apartment, flipping through an old photo album. There was a picture of him as a child, his mother holding his hand with a proud smile on her face. The memories were there, buried beneath anger and betrayal, but he wasn't going to let them hold him back anymore. The truth was that he had always been free of them. It just took him so long to realize it. Closing the album, he smiled to himself, and a rare feeling of peace washed over him. There was no turning back. The phones kept ringing. His mother, his aunt, his sister. Each of them was desperate, pleading in their own way. But Adam didn't answer. He didn't respond to the messages or read the emails that filled his inbox. He was done. Although it was strange. For the first time, he didn't feel a shred of guilt. Not even when his phone buzzed, signaling a new message from his sister. "Mom isn't feeling well, Adam. Please come home. This is more important than your pride. She needs you." He felt nothing. For years, he had been the one taking the blows, the one giving in and adapting, the one making concessions. But in the end, it wasn't enough. Days turned into weeks, and Adam remained unmoved. He focused on his work, on the residency he had fought so hard for, on the new future he was building for himself. But there were still moments, quiet moments, when he looked at the phone in his hand and wondered if he was making a mistake. But every time he picked up the phone and saw their names on the screen, he put it down. He would no longer be their backup. He would not be the one they turned to when the going got tough. They could try to manipulate him all they wanted, but the truth was, they didn't understand him. And then the day came when his sister showed up at his apartment. It was Saturday, a little after noon. Adam had just finished a long shift at the hospital and was sitting on the couch, flipping through an old medical textbook. But his thoughts were far from the words on the pages of the book. He kept thinking about that day at graduation, the empty seats and the silence that followed. There was a sharp, quick knock at the door. He frowned, stood up, and walked across the room. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened the door, his sister was standing there, pale, with red eyes, as if she had been crying for hours. "I didn't know where else to go," she said quietly, her voice trembling with emotion. Adam's heart beat faster, but he said nothing. He just stood there, waiting for her to continue. "I'm sorry, okay? I know what I did. I should have been there for you. I should have understood," she said, her voice trembling as she looked up at him. Adam crossed his arms and leaned against the doorframe. He didn't invite her in, but simply let the silence hang between them. "Please, Adam," she begged, her voice breaking. "Mom, she's very sick. It's really bad. She's not asking you to come, but I think you should. I don't know how much time she has left." Those words hit Adam like a punch in the gut. He didn't know what to feel. Years of hurt, an endless cycle of neglect, it all mixed with a sudden rush of guilt that overwhelmed him. His mother had never been there for him, but she was still his mother. He took a step back, rubbed his face, trying to figure out what to do. "I can't just show up like this, he said quietly, his voice calm but firm. "Not after everything that's happened." His sister's face crumpled, and she moved closer, reaching out her hands, almost begging him. I know it's not that simple. But Adam, it's not about that anymore. It's about just being there. Just once, you can show up. It's not about what she did to you. It's about what's left." Adam looked at her, trying to find the words. He thought again about the empty spaces, the years of ignored invitations, the constant feeling that he would never be enough. Finally, he said, barely audibly, "I can't just forgive everything. I can't pretend it doesn't hurt." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. "I know, but maybe you don't have to forgive her. Maybe you just need to stop punishing yourself. It's not about them anymore. It's about you." Adam looked at his sister. For the first time in many years, he saw cracks in her armor. She wasn't perfect. She wasn't there for him, not really. But now she was standing there, vulnerable, asking for something he wasn't sure he could give her. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped back, closing the door slightly but leaving enough space for her to know he was listening. "I'll think about it," he said quietly. And for the first time, Adam allowed himself the luxury of silence. A silence that wasn't filled with anger or pain, but with the quiet possibility of a future that didn't have to be defined by the past. Standing there with his sister waiting behind the door, Adam realized something. He wasn't sure what would happen next. He wasn't sure if he could ever forgive his mother or his family. But for the first time, he wasn't walking into a situation where he had something to prove. This time, he could walk away if he wanted to. But maybe it was time to stop running. Adam sat down at the kitchen table and stared at his phone. His sister's words echoed in his head all evening, repeating themselves over and over like a ghost. "Maybe you just need to stop punishing yourself." Until that moment, he hadn't realized what a burden he had been carrying. Anger and betrayal had built up layer upon layer until it was suffocating him. But now he was finally beginning to see the cracks. His family's attitude had made him bitter, but it had also trapped him, forcing him to hold on to resentment that no longer made sense. The clock on the wall ticked quietly, and Adam looked up. It was almost midnight, but he couldn't sleep. He grabbed his jacket and, without thinking, left the apartment. At this hour, the streets were empty, and the only sound was the echo of his footsteps as he walked toward his mother's house. He didn't know if he was ready for what he might find there, but he couldn't stay away. When he approached the stairs of the house, his heart beat a little faster. He hadn't been here in so long. The house smelled the same as it always had, a mixture of vanilla and dust, as if time had stopped the moment he last crossed the threshold. He knocked twice. After a long pause, the door creaked and opened. Standing in the doorway was his mother, frail and thin, her face worn with exhaustion. There were no loud words, no apologies. She just stared at him, her eyes clouded with tears. "Adam," she whispered in a quiet, almost broken voice. "I didn't think you would come." "I don't know why I came," he said, his voice trembling with unexpected emotion. He was still angry, still broken by what they had done to him, but something in her gaze, something in the quiet despair of her eyes drew him in. She stepped aside, letting him in without a word. The house was eerily quiet. No laughter, no chatter. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards under his feet. His mother led him into the living room, where Aunt Katie and his younger sister were sitting quietly on the sofa. There was a heaviness in the air that Adam could feel in his bones. "Sit down, Adam," his mother said gently, her voice barely audible. "We need to talk." Adam hesitated, but sat down in an armchair, looking around the room. He felt as if the walls were closing in on him. The family he had once longed for, the people who had always been out of reach, were now here, and they were all looking at him with the same empty eyes. "We're so sorry," his Aunt Katie began, her voice trembling. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We were too proud, too caught up in our own lives to see how much you needed us." "Yes," added his sister, her face reddening. "I know I behaved terribly. I should have been there for you, Adam. But I didn't know how to reach you." Adam took a deep breath, trying to hold back the anger rising in him again. Too little, too late, he thought bitterly. But something inside him was changing, like a small crack was forming in the stone that had been his heart for years. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just let the silence stretch out, thick and heavy between them. Finally, he spoke. "Why should I forgive you?" he asked quietly. "After everything. After all these years of pretending you didn't care about me, of making me feel invisible. Why should I just forget about it?" His mother's face crumpled, and she looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "We were wrong," she whispered. "I was wrong. I thought I was doing what was best for you, protecting you from failure. But now I realize how much I hurt you, and I don't know if I can ever make it up to you." Adam felt a wave of emotion rise within him, but he held it back. He wasn't ready to forgive. "Not yet. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you did," he said. "But I'm here. And that's something." His mother nodded slowly, her eyes filled with tears. She didn't speak, just sat with her head bowed in shame. "I've had a lot of time to think," Adam continued, his voice growing stronger. "Maybe I was too hard on all of you. Maybe I punished myself more than I punished you." His sister's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't say a word. Neither did Katie. "I've come to terms with what happened," Adam said, looking at each of them. "I don't know what the future holds, but I can't keep holding on to the past. So if you want to start over, if you want me to be part of this family again, it's going to take time. A lot of time." His mother nodded, her lips trembling. "I understand, Adam. We're willing to do whatever it takes." Adam stood up, feeling the weight of his decision settle on him. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet, but it was a start he hadn't known he needed. "I'm not promising anything," he said, turning back to the door. "But maybe we can try again. Maybe we'll see if there's anything left worth saving." Stepping out into the cold night, he closed the door behind him, and Adam finally felt like he could breathe again. He didn't know if his family would change or if he would ever truly forgive them. But he knew one thing: he was no longer a prisoner of the past. For the first time in many years, he was free. The next few days passed in a blur. Adam couldn't shake the heaviness that still weighed on his chest, even after his unexpected visit to his mother's house. The thin thread that tied him to his family was now hanging by a thread, and he wasn't sure it would be enough to hold him together. He returned to his normal life at the hospital, where long shifts and exhausting work saving lives became a convenient escape. But every night, when the adrenaline wore off, his thoughts returned to those moments. The conversations with his mother, his sister's tearful apologies, the look on his Aunt Katie's face when she realized how deep the cracks were. It wasn't the solution he had imagined, but it was something. One evening, after another exhausting shift, Adam collapsed onto his bed, exhausted but restless. From across the room, his phone rang. He ignored it for a moment, the habit of silence instilled in him by his family too deeply ingrained. But the ringing continued, growing louder and more insistent. Sighing, Adam reached out and picked up the phone. It was a message from his sister. "Please call me. I need to talk to you." His thumb hovered over the screen, the message making his stomach clench. This was not a normal message. His sister never asked to talk unless it was something serious. Adam slowly sat down, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. After a long pause, he called her. "Adam?" His sister's voice came through the speaker, a little too loud, a little too nervous. "What's wrong, Jack?" Adam asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. The distance between them was still there, but now it felt different. It wasn't anger that kept them apart, it was the remnants of doubt, the uncertainty about what might happen next. "It's Mom," she said, her voice trembling. "She's not doing well. The doctors, they don't know how long she has left." Adam's heart raced, but he didn't let it show. He had been preparing for this moment, but hearing it out loud made it real. Too real. "She asked about you," his sister continued, almost pleading. She forgives you, Adam. She knows what she did. And she's scared. I don't think she can do this without you." Adam felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Part of him wanted to run away, shut himself off again, return to the quiet, controlled life he had built without them. But another part, the part he didn't want to admit, felt drawn to something deeper. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. To a connection. To a family that, despite everything, he couldn't just walk away from. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his face with his free hand. "I don't know, Jack. I'm not sure I can do this. Not after everything that's happened." "I understand, I really do," she said quietly. "But she's dying, Adam. She's dying, and if there's any part of you that wants to make things right, if you want to know that you tried, this is your chance. We don't have much time." Adam didn't answer right away. His mind spun, whirling in a whirlwind of memories, anger, and the possibility of forgiveness. He had spent so long building walls around himself, shutting them out, punishing them. But could he just walk away now? Could he just let her go? "All right," he said finally, his voice steady but barely holding. "I'll come, but it won't change anything, Jack. I'm not going back to the way things were." I know, she whispered. "But thank you. You're doing the right thing." Adam hung up, feeling the weight of his decision on his chest. He had made his choice, but uncertainty still gnawed at him. He spent the rest of the night in quiet reflection, pacing around his apartment, not knowing what to expect when he arrived. He had no idea what condition his mother was in, how much time she had left, or what state she would be in when he arrived. But he knew one thing: this was his last chance to decide if he could ever be part of this family again. The next morning, Adam packed his suitcase and drove along familiar roads to his mother's house. The trip passed in a fog of thoughts and emotions. Snow began to fall, and the world outside the window turned gray and white. It was as if it perfectly reflected his inner turmoil. When he pulled up to the house, it looked the same: quiet, empty, a place that had always been full of promises but never delivered. He rang the doorbell and waited, his heart beating faster and faster. The door opened, and his sister stood there, pale and exhausted. "She's upstairs," she said quietly. "She's asleep, but she wants to see you." Adam nodded and entered the house. It was cold and too quiet. Muffled breathing sounds came from upstairs. He climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. He approached his mother's door and stopped. His sister stood next to him, holding onto the doorframe and looking at him. "You don't have to do this, Adam," she said quietly. "You don't have to forgive her. You just have to come in." Adam nodded and slowly opened the door. His mother was lying in bed, pale and frail, breathing shallowly. She was so different from the woman who had rejected him so many times, so small and vulnerable. There was no fire in her eyes, no strength in her posture. Only remnants of the woman who had once ruled his entire life. She turned her head slightly when he entered and opened her eyes. A faint smile appeared on her lips. "Adam," she whispered. "You came." He stood there, not knowing what to say. This wasn't the reunion he had imagined. This wasn't the apology he had been waiting for. But at that moment, it didn't matter. He slowly walked over to her and sat down by the bed. "I'm here, Mom," he said quietly, barely audible. "I don't know what that means yet, but I'm here." And for the first time in a long time, Adam allowed the weight of the past to lift a little from his shoulders. He didn't know what would happen next, or if he would ever be able to truly forgive her. But in that moment, he finally allowed himself to stop running. The next few days flew by in a blur, one merging into the next as Adam stayed by his mother's side. She slept most of the time, her condition rapidly deteriorating. There were moments when she woke up, her eyes cloudy but searching for him, as if she couldn't believe he was there. But Adam didn't ask any questions. He didn't try to impose anything on her. He just sat there, letting the silence speak for itself. His sister was there too, watching, waiting, perhaps hoping that something would change. But Adam had no hope. He was just there. He had already come to terms with the fact that nothing would ever be the same again. His mother had been there when it mattered most, and that was enough, for now. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a soft golden light through the blinds, his mother opened her eyes, her voice weak but insistent. "Adam." He sat by the window, watching the snowflakes slowly fall to the street. He turned to her, his heart sinking at the sight of her frail, trembling form. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how to love you properly. I thought I was protecting you, but now I understand. Now I understand that I was wrong." Adam didn't respond right away. He didn't know what to say. Years of hurt and pain were all there, just below the surface. But now, in this moment, it was too late. Still, he reached out, took her hand in his, and squeezed it gently. "I know, Mom," he said hoarsely. "I know." That was enough. It had to be enough. For the first time in many years, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. It wasn't the calm that comes with forgiveness, it wasn't that simple. It was the calm that comes with acceptance. Acceptance that things would never be the same again. That his mother, despite all her flaws, was a human being. And maybe, just maybe, he could let go of the past. Later that night, as his mother slept restlessly, Adam sat in the living room, alone with his thoughts. His phone rang again, but he ignored it. It was his Aunt Katie, probably asking if he was coming to a small family gathering the next day. The same family that had spent his entire life trying to humiliate him. He wasn't ready for that. Sitting there, he finally realized the full weight of what had happened. He had come full circle. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when he would no longer be defined by their expectations, their contempt. His future was no longer tied to them. He had built a life for himself that did not require their approval. And yet a part of him, just a small part, wondered if he would ever find a way to move forward with them. Not as the son they wanted him to be, but as the man he had become. The phone rang again. Another message, this time from his sister. "Mom is calling you. She's not feeling well, Adam. She may not have much time left. I don't know how much time we have." He closed his eyes and exhaled. It wasn't about time anymore. It wasn't about his mother's regret or his own guilt. It was about moving forward, no matter what came next. He stood up, walked over to the window, and looked out at the city lights. The future seemed open, like a large, blank page. And he finally felt free enough to take the next step, whatever that might be. His phone rang again, but this time he didn't look at it. He knew what he had to do. Returning to the room where his mother lay, Adam walked down the hallway. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid.